Hello everybody, I'm Letitia from Main Communications and today I'm at Peninsula International School Australia, and joining me today is the Senior School Principal, Miss Emily Vallance. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
For people who are not familiar with it, can you describe the Victorian Curriculum?
So the Victorian Curriculum was really produced to support development through years foundation to 10 in order to prepare students for the VCE, which is the Victorian Certificate of Education, which is basically the award that students will achieve in their final 2 years of school in Victoria. And probably one of the things that for me stands out with the Victorian Curriculum and is why I'm really passionate about teaching it is it works on a learning continuum. So a student in year 5 might actually be a level 2 or they might be a level 10. We all know that children come to school with a whole range of different past experiences and different skill sets. And what the Victorian Curriculum does is it takes that into consideration. So we don't have to teach children as a year 5, we can teach them as an individual and personalise the learning based on where they sit on that kind of developmental journey. And for me, that's something that all of the modern educational research tells us is what we should be doing, but a lot of curriculums don't allow us to do. So the Victorian Curriculum allows us to do that and be flexible.
And does the curriculum have any core principles?
One of the core principles is this learning continuum, and that has a big impact on assessment. And so rather than assessment being based on grades, it's based on set skills. So what happens to a student who's going through the Victorian Curriculum is rather than always being an A and never really knowing what they need to do to get to the next stage, or from the other's perspective, always being a D or an E grade student, they actually get to see the progression that they make through their studies. The impact that has in terms of their motivation, their willingness to engage and learn and feel like they're able to progress is really positive. And for me, that's one of the real strengths of the Victorian Curriculum and what underlines it in terms of its sort of key principles.
And you mentioned earlier that students sit for the Victorian Certificate of Education. What other exams do students sit for leading up to the VCE?
So I guess coming back to those core principles, it's about tracking progress throughout the whole of a student's sort of learning journey. So starting in foundation and then moving all the way through to level 10, or which usually coincides with year 10. Once students complete the year 10, there is no external assessment, there's no external exams, so it takes away the pressure and allows them to focus on their own learning and finding out what their passions are and building a love for learning. What then happens when they journey into year 11 is they start the Victorian Certificate of Education, which is a 2-year course, which concludes with external exams at the end of the year 12.
Emily, and in your opinion, what are some unique characteristics of the Victorian Curriculum?
For me, the Victorian Curriculum, one of its biggest strengths is these capabilities. So they look and focus on things like creative thinking, problem-solving skills, intercultural skills and ethical skills and understanding of the world. That and as well this focus on the individual and personalising learning. We can use the levels to identify where a student's at when they join us. We find them on that level, on that developmental continuum, and then direct our teaching and learning specifically to the needs of those individual students. And that's a huge strength for this curriculum.
And why should parents consider the Victorian Curriculum for their children?
Aside from the previous points that I've made, I think that one of the advantages for the Victorian Curriculum, and specifically the Victorian Certificate of Education, is the direct pathway for universities in Australia. But it's also internationally recognised, so whether you want to go to university in Australia or Malaysia, the UK, the US, or wherever in the world, they all recognise the Victorian Certificate of Education as a suitable qualification for university entry.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and insight on the Victorian Curriculum, and I hope all of you at home learned something new about the international curricula offered in Malaysia today.